before time. That never happens in Mexico. It's usually the other way. But we are a little bit ahead of time, and that's fine because that way we can walk back and hopefully get no rain before we get to the hotel. Well, it's my pleasure to have Maria here with us. She's an expert in intercultural exchanges, and she will tell you about Mexican culture and give you some tips. Please be free to ask her if you have any questions about living in Mexico. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Okay, I know you all just arrived, right? Is that correct? Who here knows how you properly greet somebody in Mexico? Can you show me? Hola, mucho gusto. Okay, before you freak out, relax. That's usually women with women, women with men. Does anybody know how the guys say hello? Okay. Cesar, you want to show, help us? Everybody's
Well, who wants to act?
I'm gonna be a guy.
Okay.
Hey, ¿qué pasó?
How are you doing, Maria?
Hey,
Nice to see you. It is usually stronger.
I'm a lady, so. Okay. This is, I think it's really important because one of the first impressions we get from a new culture comes from the first moment where we start greeting people, right? And I have a story I want to tell you. This happened a few years ago when I went back to Philadelphia for the summer. And my daughter, Lorena, I guess she must have been about 12 at the time. And I had one of my colleagues there. So I introduced her, Lorena, this is Jim. And as a good Mexican child, you know, she went to say hello in the proper way. I didn't really notice what went down, but I noticed like there was a kind of like a nervous laughter. And then after, you know, a short time later, I was talking to her and she's like, oh my God, Mom. I'm like, what? She's like, oh, I was so embarrassed with your friend. I said, why? She's like, Mom, she goes, I went, you know, I grabbed his hand and I leaned in and he instinctively moved back. And she goes, and I was halfway there. And all I could do was like, go like this. And I started laughing. She's like, oh my God, did he say something to you? Did he say something to you? You know how preteens are, right? So she's like, oh my God. So I said, honey, it makes a lot of sense. She's like, what? I said, when we left, he said to me, you know, I think your daughter really likes me. So anyhow, I mean, these are the things that you learn. You live and learn, right? And I never had the heart to tell my dear friend Jim that she was just going to fall on her face. So she just had to hang on for dear life. Anyhow, I figure I'll talk to you a little bit about, since it's only 2 hours that we have, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that are most important when we're starting a new assignment the way you are. Are most of you here for a full year? Yeah?
Yes.
Everybody, full year. Okay. And I take it you're going to be in different locations? Yeah? Okay. But all within Mexico, right? Okay. How many of you had a chance to live abroad before? Can you raise your hand? Oh, wow. Okay. Great. So you guys are veterans, and I'm going to be leaving now. Thanks. No. First things first. I'm sure most of you know what it feels like to live through this, right? What would you say, how would you define culture shock? Anybody?
I view it as kind of like you have a narrative of things that fit in your life, and all of a sudden something enters into it, and nothing, the scene, the characters, the setting don't fit anymore.
Okay.
So your narrative doesn't make sense temporarily.
Okay, so kind of like that, like there's a disconnect. You're trying to fit a different kind of plug into a different kind of socket, and you can't get through. Okay, anybody else?
For me, it's never the differences like the food or how you greet people. It's things that don't make sense to me. Like I bought a Metro card the other day and it still doesn't work because they haven't changed the readers yet. Like
Okay.
that kind of thing is always just like, why?
Okay. Things that frustrate you. the things that kind of make you trip.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good example. Okay, anybody else?
For me, culture shock is very much a roller coaster ride, because one minute you're super excited about what you just discovered, the next minute you're really frustrated because you can't get your Metro card to work, and then the next minute you're like, oh, I totally thought I had this, but then you don't. So it's just, it's fun and exciting, but at the same time there's those frustrating moments, so it's very much like in that U curve, but with squiggles along the way.
Okay, perfect. Okay, it's all those, talking about the U curve. Here we go. Okay, although in this case it's a W curve, and you can see why, okay? If you notice, those first, and you probably have all felt this, and it's through empirical knowledge that you probably are now probably in a different place than you were first time around, right? Okay? But usually before you make that move, there's this bit of anticipatory stress, where one day you're really excited about this new adventure, and then the next day you're having second thoughts, and then the next day you're all gung-ho again, and then the next day you're like, what if I miss something? Okay? And then we get to the point of the honeymoon. Are you guys in the honeymoon stage yet? Or you're still kind of like, deer in headlights kind of thing? Anybody? Come on, you got to
Love Mexico already.
Cool. Okay, so you're in the honeymoon stage for sure. Okay. Anybody else? Honeymoon? Yeah, no, maybe? Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, honeymoon is usually when you first arrive, you start visualizing yourself, you kind of see yourself living this long vacation, and you're just like, oh my God, the tacos are so delicious, and isn't it so, I love their accent, oh my God, and I'm learning this new slang, and oh my gosh, it's so sweet that people kiss on the cheek when they say hello, and you know, it goes on and on, okay? Well, what happens? It ends really fast, right? If any of you have ever been married, you know. It ends, okay? So what happens? You start having to, you realize that it's not all peaches and cream, that you have to be, you need to be productive, and on top of that, you have to think of a whole bunch of other little things that you used to do in automatic pilot. And that gets to be exhausting, okay? So it's the stuff that kind of like, it's like, oh, I have to expend more energy on this, and oh, this isn't working, and oh my gosh. And oh, you know, at that point, you kind of have this dip where you start comparing to what you used to have. Maybe it's the previous country you lived in, or maybe it's back home, but it's just that, I guess it's kind of like wishing that you were back in control of your life. Not so much that you think that the last place you were was utopia. It's more like, at least back there I knew how to X, Y, Z. Okay? So that's basically what causes this sense of disconnect, if you will. And fortunately, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and when you get back to the automatic pilot, you're fine. And how long would you say it takes before you're in automatic pilot from your previous experiences? 3 months?
3 to 6 months.
3 to 6 months? Is that about what you guys felt, most of you? Yeah? Anybody disagree? No? Okay, yeah, more or less. I mean, it depends on each person, but in general, it might take you a couple of months before you finally get to the competency level to be able to have your routine and get back into the swing of things and not have to think about every tiny little minute detail. Okay? Now, I have news for you. After a while, when you go back home, this can happen. Has anyone gone through that reverse culture shock? Raise your hand. Okay, quite a few of you. What happens?
You get really frustrated. You feel like people don't understand that what you went through.
Okay,
You feel like you're readapting to things or that you've missed things.
okay.
So it's sort of like your home country has become your new host country.
True. Okay. Anybody want to add to that?
It's like you have to reintegrate with, like, I had to like reintegrate with my group of friends. Because
Okay.
they learned to like function without me, and so then trying to get back into it, being like, hey, let me out, you know, or like,
It's like,
I came back.
can I come back?
I'm still like excited.
Okay. things. On the one hand, life has gone on without you, so you're not part of the routine anymore, so you kind of have to dig your little hole again. And then there's another part of, reintegrating yourself in the sense that you've gone through certain experiences that other people just don't get. And people don't want to hear about well, back in Mexico, well, back in Mexico, they're like, shut up already, So it's kind of like a little bit of all of these things woven together. And when you go back, you see things that you didn't see before, because now you have a little bit of the lens of a foreigner. So you see things that you didn't see before. Okay? Does this kind of sound familiar? Some of the recommendations, which you probably know yourself better, is just taking good care of yourself, when you're in one of those down moods. Eat well and sleep well. There's nothing worse than being sick and depressed. So take good care of yourself. Find yourself a routine as soon as you can. Don't stop doing the stuff that you love to do. If you like to work out, find yourself a routine. If you like to run or if you like to hike, whatever it is that takes the stress away, make sure you do it, okay? Because that's the best way to kind of get back into the swing of things, okay? Now, we talked a little bit about the coming back after we've been away for a while. Part of that, the feeling a little bit disconnected when we come back, is because our filters have changed. And I like to make this analogy with sunglasses, of course. And if any of you have taken any kind of cross-cultural course before, has anybody? Okay, then you probably have seen this analogy, right? And the iceberg and all of that, okay? I'm not going to bore you with that. But this is very useful to realize that your culture is not something you're born with. It's something that you learn, usually from your parents and the people who influence you early on in your childhood. Okay? Usually they're the ones that teach you how to interact with others. Okay? What are the laws of interaction, for example, for us in the U.S.? What are some of the things they teach you when you're a kid that you should or shouldn't do when it comes to, protocol and courtesy and all of that?
Talk to strangers in an elevator.
Talk to them or not talk to them?
Don't.
No. Don't talk to them in an elevator or anything, right?
Don't talk to them.
Okay, don't talk to strangers. Usually it's just don't talk to strangers, period. Okay, yeah, don't talk to strangers, because, it might be dangerous for sure. Anything else?
Respect personal boundaries, give people their personal
18
space.
Okay. How many inches?
18.
I would say it's an arm's length, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Is that about it? An arm's length? More than a foot? Okay. This is our personal space. Don't mess with my personal space, right? And usually mothers will say, honey, when kids are like stand back. I used to teach at the university at the Tec de Monterrey campus, Cuernavaca, and my American students, these were young men, about 16, 17, 18. They would tell me that when they went to the movies, these were American boys. They said, when we go to the movies, talking about space and all, he goes, usually one guy sits in one chair and we leave a space next to it. And I'm like, why on earth do you do that? If you go with like 3 or 4 buddies, like, well, it's kind of, Maria, it's kind of like it's kind of like we need our space, and it's a masculine thing, and we don't want to anyone to think that we're like a couple or stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But it's just like girls don't do that. Usually we all sit together, right? So there's this thing about space and gender as well, I think. But anyhow, what are some of the other things that you're taught?
Eye contact.
Okay, what about it? That's a good one.
Maintain eye contact when you're talking about something.
Okay. Look at me when I'm talking to you, right? Especially when you're getting scolded.
Right, and then also to occasionally look away so you're not intimidating the person.
Okay. Well, one more thing about eye contact. What about strangers?
Depends on where you're from.
I was gonna say,
No, I'm talking about in the U.S. What are you taught?
It depends on where you are in the U.S.
Really?
In Kansas, it's like when you're walking down the street, you're like, hey, you smile and say hi to everyone.
Okay.
Down the street.
What if you're sitting, you're not in Kansas, right? What do you do when you're sitting on the bus and there's people in front of you? Are you supposed to look at them or not? Stare, the word stare, which by the way, does not translate into Spanish. There's no word for staring. Did you know that? Okay. No such thing as the word staring. You can look fixedly, mirar fijamente, but there's no real word for staring. So that can kind of cause some difficulties as well. I can tell you from experience. Some of my clients are like, what's up with the staring, you know? Okay? That's a good example. Okay, and like those, we have many different things that we're taught as kids as do's and don'ts for personal interaction, okay? So what happens when we leave our environment, okay, and we enter a different one, and people, they get into our personal space and they start kissing us and they're staring at us, okay? What happens there?